Greetings everyone, my name is Gigi and this is Let's Build, wherein I build a Lego set, time to different media, and talk about the facts concerning the topic of the build. Today's build is part 2 of Lego Space Discovery versus the game Star Fox from the Super Nintendo Entertainment System. I will not be playing any of the audio for copyright reasons. The footage I am using from this game is for science and educational purposes for the time lapse. If you want to see or learn about the LEGO NASA Hubble Space Telescope, please check out my Part 1 video. Moving on to specifications of the LEGO set. Celebrate the wonders of space with this LEGO NASA Space Shuttle Discovery model building set for adults. With 2,354 pieces, this engaging challenge lets you build the Space Shuttle Discovery plus the Hubble Space Telescope launched on NASA's STS-31 mission in 1990. An astronaut's view. Packed with features, this build marks the amazing accomplishments of Discovery. Open the payload bay to deploy the Hubble telescope on its mission to explore the cosmos. The telescope features movable solar panels and an aperture door. The multiple display stands let you display the Space Shuttle model and telescope individually or together. A building project for you. The LEGO NASA Space Shuttle Discovery set is part of a series of buildable models for adults, offering an escape from everyday life with display pieces to admire. Take a journey of exploration with NASA LEGO Space Shuttle Discovery Model Building Kit for adults. Enjoy hours of immersive building as you create both the Space Shuttle Discovery and Hubble Space Telescope from NASA's 1990 NASA STS-31 mission. Check out the authentic features including opening payload bay, retractable landing gear, opening cockpit, moving Evelons, space arm, plus 5 seats for the crew. Looking for the best gifts for adults who love a creative project? This space shuttle model will appeal to space enthusiasts and anyone wanting an immersive building challenge, making it a great gift. Comes with coffee table style instructions that include inspirational design details. With multiple display stands, this space shuttle model makes an eye-catching centerpiece for home or office. The Space Shuttle measures over 8.5 inches high, 21 inches long, and 13.5 inches wide, making it the perfect size to display. This Space Shuttle model is from a series of collectible building kits designed for adult LEGO fans who appreciate good design, perfect if you're looking for top gifts for adults who love to build. And from the manual, or instruction booklet, a spaceflight icon. 5 space shuttle orbiters made up of NASA's Space Transportation System, or STS, fleet, the Columbia, Challenger, Discovery, Atlantis, and Endeavour. Combined, they flew 135 missions carrying 355 people into space. Discovery flew the most missions, carrying the highest number of passengers, while traveling further and higher than the other orbiters. It was also Discovery's assignment to launch and deploy the Hubble Space Telescope in April 1990 as part of the STS-31 mission. In 2021, the 40th anniversary of the Space Shuttle program, we take the opportunity to revisit this famous mission. From the design team. The Space Shuttle is one of the most complex vehicles ever made, so translating this into a LEGO set was a little daunting. We needed to create a smooth exterior and an interior capable of holding the payload, but the biggest challenge was adding functional landing gear. Trying to couple the front and main landing gear without removing any space from the payload bay and without compromising the structure of the model was a real puzzle. It's easy to be blown away by the complex engineering and sheer power of these vehicles, but for me, the most fascinating thing about spaceflight is the human element. That's why my favorite part of this model are the tiny blue seats that carried 5 human beings on this special mission. I spent hours as a kid building my own versions of the lunar lander and Discovery orbiter in Lego bricks, So to be asked to work on this project was so exciting and such a privilege. From Lego designer Milan Maj. Future endeavors. Since retiring the Space Shuttle in 2011, NASA has created public-private partnerships with companies Boeing and SpaceX to develop and operate a new generation of spacecraft and launch systems, capable of carrying crews to low Earth orbit and the International Space Station, encouraging industry to provide human transportation services to and from low Earth orbit allows NASA to expand its focus on building spacecraft and rockets for the next giant leap, with space missions to the Moon and Mars. The Discovery. Space Shuttle Discovery, or Orbital Vehicle Designation OV-103, is a retired American space shuttle orbiter. This space plane was one of the orbiters from NASA's Space Shuttle program and the third of 5 fully operational orbiters to be built. Its first mission, STS-41D, flew from August 30th to September 5th, 1984. Over 27 years of service, it launched and landed 39 times, aggregating more space flights than any other spacecraft as of December 2014. The Space Shuttle launch vehicle had 3 main components: the Space Shuttle Orbiter, a single-use central fuel tank, and 2 reusable solid rocket boosters. Nearly 25,000 heat-resistant tiles cover the orbiter to protect it from high temperatures on re-entry. Discovery became the third operational orbiter to enter service, preceded by Columbia and Challenger. After the Challenger and Columbia accidents, Discovery became the oldest surviving orbiter. It embarked on its final mission, STS-133, on February 24, 2011, and touched down for the last time at Kennedy Space Center on March 9th, having spent a cumulative total of nearly a full year in space. Discovery performed both research and International Space Station (ISS) assembly missions, and also carried the Hubble Space Telescope into orbit, among other satellites. Discovery was the first operational shuttle to be retired, followed by Endeavour and then Atlantis. The shuttle is now on display at the Stephen F. Udvar Hazy Center of the Smithsonian National Air and Space Museum. The name Discovery was chosen to carry on a tradition based on the ships of exploration, primarily HMS Discovery, one of the ships commanded by Captain James Cook during his third and final major voyage from 1776 to 1779, and Henry Hudson's Discovery, which was used in 1610 to 1611 to explore Hudson Bay and search for a northwest passage. Other ships bearing the name have included HMS Discovery of the 1875 and 1876 British Arctic Expedition to the North Pole, and RRS Discovery, which carried the 1901 to 1904 Discovery Expedition to Antarctica, led by Captain Scott. Space Shuttle Discovery launched the Hubble Space Telescope and conducted the second and third Hubble service missions. It also launched the Ulysses probe and 3 TDRS satellites. Twice, Discovery was chosen as the return-to-flight orbiter, first in 1988 after the loss of Challenger in 1986, and then again for the twin return-to-flight missions in July of 2005 and July 2006 after the Columbia disaster in 2003. Project Mercury astronaut John Glenn, who was 77 at the time, flew with Discovery on STS-95 in 1998, making him the oldest person to go into space at the time in history. Had plans to launch United States Department of Defense payloads from Vandenberg Air Force Base gone ahead, Discovery would have become the dedicated U.S. Air Force shuttle. Its first West Coast mission, STS-62A, was scheduled for 1986 but canceled in the aftermath of the Challenger disaster. On May 20th, nope, On May 27, 1999, Discovery was launched on STS-96, the first shuttle mission to dock with the International Space Station. Discovery was retired after completing its final mission, STS-133, on March 9th of 2011. The spacecraft is now on display in Virginia at the Stephen S. Udvar-Hazy Center, an annex of the Smithsonian Institution's National Air and Science Museum. Features and upgrades. During its construction, Discovery was fitted with several black tiles near the middle starboard window where there should have been white tiles. It is unknown if this was the result of a harmless manufacturing mishap or done intentionally to give a distinctive look to the shuttle. This feature has been called teardrop and allowed Discovery to be told apart from the rest of the fleet without looking at its name, although often unnoticed by the uninitiated. The spacecraft weighed roughly 6,870 pounds, less than Columbia when it was brought into service due to optimizations determined during the construction and testing of Enterprise, Columbia, and Challenger. Discovery weighed 6 pounds heavier than Atlantis and 363 pounds heavier than Endeavour after further weight-saving adjustments were made. Part of the Discovery weight optimizations include the greater use of quilted AFRSI blankets rather than the white LRSI tiles on the fuselage, and the use of graphite epoxy instead of aluminum for the payload bay doors and some of the wing spars and beams. Upon its delivery to the Kennedy Space Center in 1983, Discovery was modified alongside Challenger to accommodate the liquid-fueled Centaur G booster, which had been planned for use beginning in 1986 but was canceled in the wake of the Challenger disaster. Beginning in late 1995, the orbiter underwent a 9-month orbiter maintenance down period in Palmdale, California. This included outfitting the vehicle with a fifth set of cryogenic tanks and an external airlock to support missions to the International Space Station. As with all the orbiters, it could be attached to the top of specialized aircraft and did so in June of 1996 when it returned to the Kennedy Space Center, and later in April 2012 when sent to the Udvar-Hazy Center, riding piggyback on a modified Boeing 747. After STS-105, Discovery became the first of the orbiter fleet to undergo orbiter major modification period at the Kennedy Space Center. Work began in September 2002 to prepare the vehicle for return to flight. The work included scheduled upgrades and additional safety modifications. Discovery was decommissioned on March 9th of 2011. NASA offered Discovery to the Smithsonian Institution's National Air and Space Museum for public display and preservation after a month-long decontamination process as part of the National Collection. Discovery replaced Enterprise, which was the Smithsonian's display at the Stephen F. Udvar-Hazy Center until 2011. Discovery was transported to Washington Dulles International Airport on April 17, 2012, and was transferred to the Udvar-Hazy on April 19th, where a welcome ceremony was held. Afterwards, at around 5:30 p.m., Discovery was rolled to its final wheels stop in the Udvar-Hazy Center. Flights. By its last mission, Discovery had flown 149 million miles in 39 missions, completed 5,830 orbits, and spent 365 days in orbit over 27 years. Discovery flew more flights than any other orbiter shuttle, including 4 in 1985 alone. Discovery flew both return-to-flight missions after the Challenger and Columbia disasters, STS-26 in 1988, STS-114 in 2005, and STS-121 in 2006. Discovery flew the antepenultimate mission of the Space Shuttle program, STS-133, having launched on February 24, 2011. Endeavour flew STS-134 and Atlantis performed STS-135, NASA's last Space Shuttle mission. On February 24, 2011, the Space Shuttle Discovery launched from Kennedy Space Center's Launch Complex 39A to begin its final orbital flight. STS-31 was the 35th mission of NASA's Space Shuttle program and the 10th flight of the Space Shuttle Discovery. The primary purpose of this mission was the deployment of the Hubble Space Telescope, or HST, into low Earth orbit. Discovery lifted off from Launch Complex 39B on April 24, 1990, from Kennedy Space Center in Florida. Following the Challenger accident, clarification was required on mission numbering, as STS-51L was also designated STS-33. Future flights with the previous STS-26 through STS-33 designators would require the R in their documentation to avoid conflicts in tracking data from one mission to another. Discovery's crew deployed the Hubble Space Telescope on April 25, 1990, and then spent the rest of the mission tending to various scientific experiments in the shuttle's payload bay, as well as operating a set of IMAX cameras to record the mission. Discovery's launch marked the first time since January 1986 that two space shuttles had been on the launch pad at the same time, Discovery on 39B and Columbia on 39A. STS-31 was launched on April 24, 1990 at 12:33. A launch attempt on April 10, 1990 was scrubbed at T-4 minutes for a faulty valve in Auxiliary Power Unit, or APU, number 1. The APU was eventually replaced and the Hubble Space Telescope's batteries were recharged. On launch day, the countdown was briefly halted at T-31 seconds when Discovery's computers failed to shut down a fuel valve line on ground support equipment. Engineers manually commanded the valve to close and the countdown continued. The main purpose of this mission was to deploy the Hubble. It was designed to operate above the Earth's turbulent and obscuring atmosphere to observe celestial objects at ultraviolet, visible, and near-infrared wavelengths. The Hubble mission was a joint NASA-ESA, European Space Agency, effort going back to the late 1970s. The rest of the mission was devoted to photography and onboard experiments. To launch HST into an orbit that guaranteed longevity, Discovery entered an orbit of around 613 by 615 kilometers. At one point during the mission, Discovery briefly reached an apogee of 621 kilometers, the highest altitude ever reached by a shuttle orbiter. The record height also permitted the crew to photograph Earth's large-scale geographic features not apparent from lower orbits. Motion pictures were recorded by two IMAX cameras, and the results appeared in the 1994 IMAX film Destiny in Space. Experiments on the mission included a biomedical technology study, advanced materials research, particle contamination and ionizing radiation measurements, and a student science project studying zero-gravity effects on electric arcs. Discovery's re-entry from its higher-than-usual orbit required a de-orbit burn of 4 minutes and 58 seconds, the longest in shuttle history up to that time. Discovery orbited the Earth 80 times during the mission. During the deployment of Hubble, one of the observatory's solar arrays stopped as it unfurled. While ground controllers searched for a way to command HST to unreel the solar array, mission specialists McCandless and Sullivan began preparing for a contingency spacewalk in the event that the array could not be deployed through ground control. The array eventually came free and unfurled through ground control while Candelas and Sullivan were pre-breathing inside the partially depressurized airlock. Secondary payloads include the IMAX cargo bay camera, or ICBC, to document operations outside the crew cabin, and a handheld IMAX camera for use inside the orbiter. Also included were the Ascent Particle Monitor, or APM, to detect particulate matter in the payload bay, a protein crystal growth, or PCG, experiment to provide data on growing protein crystals in microgravity, Radiation Monitoring Equipment 3, to measure gamma ray levels in crew cabins, investigations into polymer membrane processing to determine porosity control in the microgravity environment, and an Air Force Maui optical site experiment. The mission marked the flight of a 5-kilogram human skull, which served as the primary element of detailed secondary objective 469, also known as the in-flight radiation dose distribution experiment. This joint NASA-DoD experiment was designed to examine the penetration of radiation into the human cranium during spaceflight. The female skull was seated in a plastic matrix representative of tissue and sliced into 10 layers. Hundreds of thermoluminescent dosimeters were mounted in the skull's layers to record radiation levels at multiple depths. This experiment, which also flew on STS-28 and STS-36, was located in the shuttle's mid-deck lockers on all 3 flights, recording radiation levels at different orbital inclinations. Discovery landed on runway 22 at Edwards Air Force Base in California on April 29, 1990, at 13:49. The landing had a rollout distance of 2,705 meters, took 61 seconds, and marked the first use of carbon brakes on a shuttle. Discovery was returned to Kennedy Space Center after STS-31 on May 7, 1990. Moving on to our game today, Star Fox, known also as Star Wing in PAL regions, is a 1993 rail shooter game developed by Nintendo and Argonaut Software and published by Nintendo for the Super Nintendo Entertainment System. The first entry in the Star Fox series, the story follows the first entry in the Star Fox series, the story follows Fox McCloud and the rest of the Star Fox team defending their homeworld of Cornea against the invading forces of Andross. Star Fox was the second 3D Nintendo game after X for the Game Boy in 1992, and the first Nintendo game to use polygonal graphics, achieved with Super FX graphics chip included in the cartridge. The complex display of 3-dimensional models with polygons was uncommon in console games. Star Fox received critical acclaim and is often considered one of the greatest video games of all times. It sold more than 4 million copies and established the Star Fox series as a flagship Nintendo franchise. A sequel, Star Fox 2, was developed, but was withheld from release until 2017 as a title for the Super NES Classic Edition. The next released game in the series, Star Fox 64, was a 1997 reboot for the Nintendo 64. Nintendo re-released Star Fox worldwide for the first time in September 2017 as part of the Super NES Classic Edition. In September 2019, Star Fox was made available on the Nintendo Switch for subscribers of the Nintendo Switch Online service. Star Fox is a rail shooter in a third-person and first-person 3D perspective. The player must navigate Fox's spacecraft in R-Wing through environments while various enemies, spaceships, robots, creatures, etc., attack them. Along the way, various power-ups are placed in the stage to help the player. The player receives a score at the end of each level based on how many enemies have been destroyed and how well the player has defended their teammates. At the end of each level, there is a boss that the player must defeat before progressing to the next level. Control of the R-Wing includes thrusters and retro rockets on the R-Wing, allowing the player to temporarily speed up or slow down. These can be used to maneuver around enemy attacks and other obstacles. Damage is incurred incrementally via loss of shield energy before the destruction of the craft. The game also has a small degree of locational damage detection. If the ship's wings clip against obstacles or the ground too much, they will break off, adversely affecting the craft's handling and removing the ability to upgrade weapons. The difficulty in Star Fox is also set in a unique way. Most scrolling shooters, if they have selectable difficulty levels, allow the player to set the difficulty by choosing an option of easy, normal, or hard at the beginning of the game. This option usually affects variables such as the number of lives the player has, the number of enemies encountered in the game, the speed of the enemies, and so on. By contrast, at the beginning of Star Fox, the player is given a choice of one of 3 routes to take through the Lanat system. Each of these routes corresponds with a certain level of difficulty, but each route has its own series of unique levels. This gives Star Fox somewhat more replay value than other scrolling shooters that have a fixed series of levels each time the game is played. The 3 game paths all contain the planet Cornea, the first level, and Venom, the last level, but they each have different versions depending on the path taken. In each level, the player is accompanied by 3 computer-controlled wingmen, Peppy Hare, Slippy Toad, and Falcon Lombardi. At pre-scripted points, one will fly into the player's view, often either chasing an enemy or being chased and asking for assistance. Ignoring a wingman's pleas will result in him taking damage or even being shot down. They cannot be damaged by the player's own lasers, although they will complain if they're hit. Looking at you, Slippy. Regardless of their survival, wingmen are not present during the boss battles but rejoin the player before the next stage. A player may choose to help their wingman if they ask for assistance, as doing so will allow them to engage some of the enemies not destroyed by the player, helping the player to succeed and additionally making it easier to achieve maximum score in a given level. Additional points are also granted at the end of each level depending on the health of each wingman. If a wingman gets shot down, he will not return for the rest of the game. This game takes place in a fictional planetary system called the Lanat system, which is inhabited by anthropomorphic animal species such as foxes, frogs, birds, rabbits, and apes. It contains the planets Carnea and Venom, representing good and evil, respectively. Andros, an evil scientist, has fled to the planet Venom after being banished from Carnea and declared war on the latter, unleashing an enormous army to wreak havoc on the Lanat system. General Pepper, the commanding officer of Cornea's defense force, dispatches a prototype high-performance fighter aircraft called the R-Wing. However, lacking in time to train pilots for the new aircraft, he summons the elite mercenary team Star Fox to defeat Andros. Fox McCloud, the leader of the team, is accompanied by his teammates Falco Lombardi, Peppy Hare, and Slippy Toad. Development and release. Nintendo worked closely with Argonaut Software during the early years of the NES and Super NES. They developed a prototype on the NES, initially codenamed NES Glider, which was inspired by their earlier 8-bit game Star Glider, and was ported to this prototype to the Super NES. The polygonal style used ended up having a strong resemblance to Star Glider 2. Programmer Jez San told Nintendo that this was as good as it could get unless they were allowed to design custom hardware to make the Super NES better at processing 3D. Nintendo assented to this, and San hired chip designers to make the Super FX chip, the first 3D graphics accelerator in a consumer product. The Super FX was so much more powerful than the Super NES's standard processor that the development team joked that the Super NES was just a box to hold the chip. Argonaut did much of the base programming for the game's engine, while the character designs and artwork were mainly done in-house by Nintendo. The game design was done by Shigeru Miyamoto and Katsuya Ignuchi. Sorry if I said your names wrong. Characters were designed by Takaya Iyamura, and music was composed by Hajime Hirasawa. Nintendo suggested the arcade-style shooting element of the game, and Argonaut brought the idea of using spaceships. The R-Wing is a principal craft of the Star Fox team and has appeared in all Star Fox games to date. The R-Wing has considerable changes, though all versions of it retain a basic shape. A central fuselage, two crested streamlined pods attached at the sides, known as gravity diffusers or G diffusers, and wings mounted on the side pods. From Star Fox 64 onwards, the two side pods are distinctive blue in color. The R-Wings make an appearance in Super Smash Bros. Series. In this series, R-Wings are used by Fox and Falco as their on-screen introduction, in addition to being used as a stage obstacle in Fox's level Sector Z. The R-Wings on this stage would occasionally fly through and shoot lasers at the players. While Sector Z did not return in future titles, the stage Cornea is still very similar to it and features R-Wings. In the Venom, Lynat Cruise, and Orbital Gate assault stages, they are seen flying in the background. Additionally, R-Wings are featured as collectible trophies in certain Smash Bros. Games. The R-Wing is also an Easter egg in The Legend of Zelda Ocarina of Time, but can only be accessed by a Game Shark code. It appears in the Kokiri Forest as an enemy who can be defeated by Link with either a boomerang, fairy bow, or fairy slingshot. Once defeated, they fall to the ground, explode, and its blast may inadvertently kill Link. The R-Wing also appears as a piece of furniture in Animal Crossing Wild World and Animal Crossing City Folk. When touched by the game character, the R-Wing will briefly play the Star Fox theme music. It also appears over a box in Super Mario RPG, Hinopio's Market, but it's just decor. In Bayonetta 2, miniature R-Wings replace Bayonetta's guns when she is wearing the game's unlockable Star Fox costume. Miyamoto explains that the craft is called R-Wing because it is like one big wing shaped like an A, like the letter A. Miyamoto cited the X-Wings from Star Wars were an inspiration for the R-Wings. He frequently visited the Fushimi Inari Taisha Shrine, sorry if I said that wrong, which is about a 15-minute walk from the Nintendo corporate headquarters, and the Senban Torii gates there inspired the idea of the gates that a player would need to pilot the ship through. Miyamoto stated that he wanted the Star Fox series to star animal characters since he was not interested in making a series with conventional space fiction stories with humans, robots, monsters, and superheroes. He decided to use a fox as a main character since it reminded him of Fushimi Inari Taisha. Miyamoto explained that he always planned to use the English word fox instead of the Japanese word kitsune. Imamura used Japanese folklore as an inspiration to add a bird and a hare as two other protagonists. He also added a toad. The inspiration came from a staff member of Nintendo EAD who used a toad as his personal mascot. Imamura populated the Cornerian army with dogs and the enemy army with monkeys, and made General Pepper a dog and Andros a monkey, since there is a Japanese expression about fighting like dogs and monkeys. Miyamoto created several puppets and photographed them to use as artwork for the cover of the Star Fox game. Miyamoto was a fan of British puppet dramas such as Thunderbirds, so he wanted the game cover to feature puppets. The game was released under the title Starwing in Europe due to the similarity of the title Star Fox to a name of the German company Star Vox. In a documentary named High Score, Dylan Cuthbert and Giles Goddard discussed how when they moved to Kyoto to work in the Nintendo office, they were put in a room remotely located from the rest of Nintendo because due to the two of them not being full-time Nintendo employees, Nintendo did not want them to have access to confidential and secret projects that they were working on at the time. They also discussed how Miyamoto would come visit them frequently, providing advice and feedback in between puffs of a cigarette, as Miyamoto was a notorious chain smoker at the time. The game debuted at the Consumer Electronics Show, or CES, held at Las Vegas in January 1993. On the weekend of April 30th to May 2nd, 1993, the Super Star Fox Weekend competition took place at approximately 2,000 retail locations within the United States. Competitors received a limited edition Star Fox pin, and those who accumulated a particularly high score received Star Fox t-shirts as prizes. The competitors who achieved the highest score at their respective locations were entered into a randomized grand prize drawing for a choice between an all-expenses-paid trip to their choice of London, Paris, Sydney, or Tokyo, or a lump sum of $15,000. The grand prize was won by Trevor Petersma of Garland, Texas, who opted for the cash prize. In the United Kingdom, the competition was known as the Starwing Challenge and was held in gaming shops across the country on May 29th. Nintendo Netherlands held the Starwing competition at various game-selling stores in early 1993. The winner of each day won a large Starwing poster. Annual Starwing competitions were held during the Dutch Nintendo Championships, held in October from 1993 to 1996. After the original competition, a limited number of game cartridges created and used for the competition were sold through Nintendo Power Magazine, listed in the spring of 1994 Super Power Supplies catalog that was mailed to subscribers, with an original list price of $45. The cartridges features a time-limited single-player mode on modified stages, as well as an exclusive bonus level. The altered startup screen displays a fictional competition cartridge. According to Peter Main, Nintendo's vice president of marketing at the time, Star Fox had a marketing budget of $15 million. Star Fox was a critical success and a commercial success upon release. It topped the Japanese Fatisimu sales charts from February to March 1993, selling 325,000 units in Japan by December of 93. Nintendo sold more than 1.7 million units in Japan and the United States by the end of March of 93, becoming the fastest-selling video game launch in North America up until then. It also toppled the UK sales charts in June of 93. It went on to sell over 4 million copies worldwide by 98. Star Fox received generally positive reviews. It holds an aggregate score of 88% at Game Rankings. The gameplay was generally praised, with many reviewers comparing it favorably to Space Harrier of 1985 and Afterburner of 1987. It received a 34 out of 40 from Famitsu magazine and 4.125 out of 5 from Nintendo Power magazine. The game's groundbreaking use of 3D polygon graphics were universally lauded. Next Gen magazine pointed out Star Fox as helping pioneer the use of 3D video game graphics. The game has been used as an example of how, even with fully polygon design, the game is still very similar to old games and that there was a set path to travel through each level. Entertainment Weekly gave the game an A and wrote that the first game to incorporate Nintendo's Super FX chip, this pseudo-3D space shooter moves so fast that it practically qualifies as virtual reality. Unlike most games of its genre, however, Star Fox, Nintendo for America for the Super NES, shows some heart behind the software. Rarely have such powerful spacecrafts been piloted by so adorable an array of frogs, birds, and bunnies. Star Fox was awarded Best Shooter of 93 by Electronic Gaming Monthly. The game took number 115 spot on EGM's The Greatest 200 Video Games of Their Time, and 82nd best game made on Nintendo system in Nintendo Power's top 200 games list. In 95, Total rated Star Fox 10th in their top 100 SNES games and wrote that because of the Super FX chip, the game's graphics and gameplay are unlike any other SNES shooter. In 2009, Official Nintendo magazine ranked the game 28th on a list of greatest Nintendo games. In 2018, Complex rated Star Fox 24th in their best Super Nintendo games of all time. Star Fox has become an established Nintendo franchise with 6 more installments and numerous appearances by its characters in other media such as Super Smash Bros. Series and Starlink Battle for Atlas. A direct sequel titled Star Fox 2 was developed for the Super NES, but never released to the market, although programmer Dylan Cuthbert reported that the game was completely finished. Although Star Fox 2 was cancelled, some of the ideas and gameplay were salvaged for the 1997's Star Fox 64, released in Europe under the title Liat Wars for the Nintendo 64. Eventually, a handful of beta ROMs for Star Fox 2 at various stages of its development were leaked onto the internet, and a fan-made translation of Star Fox 2 from Japanese to English was released in the form of a patch that could be applied to one of the leaked ROMs. A finalized version of the game, obtained from a complete ROM located in Nintendo's archives, was released on the Super NES Classic Edition in September 2017. In 2002, Rare's Star Fox Adventures was released for the GameCube. It was the first Star Fox game with action-adventure elements. The player accesses Fox McCloud on the world of Sauria, known also as Dinosaur Planet. In 2005, Star Fox Assault was released for the GameCube, this time developed by Namco and specifically the same core team that handled the Ace Combat series. It incorporates third-person shooter elements into the game with grounded combat. Star Fox Command, developed by Q Games, released for the Nintendo DS in 2006, is the first game in the series on a portable system and the first to feature online multiplayer. It uses many features from the unreleased Star Fox 2, chiefly the real-time map and mission layout. Star Fox Zero, co-developed by Nintendo and Platinum Games, was released in 2016 and returns to the storyline of the original game and Star Fox 64, while incorporating new elements such as the scrapped Walker transformation from Star Fox 2 and a new gyro wing vehicle. During the game's release, Nintendo teamed up with Kellogg's and Nelsonic to develop and release a promotional Star Fox LCD Game Watch to those who bought a box of cornflakes and sent in the order form from Kellogg's to receive the Star Fox Game Watch for free. In the Game Watch, there are 4 levels, and the object is to fly towards an attack carrier and destroy it while dodging plasma balls and falling structures. The Game Watch also includes a pair of earphones and a headphone jack, due to the Game Watch missing a volume control. Nelsonic later released it in stores in a different watch appearance. The conception and development of Super Mario 64 was inspired by Miyamoto's experience working on Star Fox. Because of the popularity of the series, Google introduced an Easter egg. Typing "do a barrel roll" or Z or R twice into the search bar, the screen will rotate 360 degrees. Star Fox 2 is a rail shooter game developed by Nintendo and Argonaut Software and published by Nintendo for the Super Nintendo Entertainment System. It was completed in 1995 but did not see an official release until 2017 on the Super NES Classic Edition. Like the original Star Fox from 1993, Star Fox 2 pushed the graphical capabilities of the SNES with Argonaut's Super FX chip. Dylan Cuthbert was the lead programmer, with Shigeru Miyamoto returning as the producer and Katsuya Iguchi as the director. Star Fox 2 introduces semi-real-time gameplay, new ship types, new playable characters, and a more advanced 3D game engine. The story continues the battle against Emperor Andros, who seeks to destroy the Liat system. Sorry, it's Liat system. By 1995, 3D technology was advancing quickly, and the 3D game market was expanding with competition from Sony PlayStation and Sega Saturn consoles. Concerning that the 16-bit graphics of Star Fox 2 would compare poorly against newer games, Nintendo canceled Star Fox 2 release to prioritize its upcoming Nintendo 64 console. The Nintendo 64 game, Star Fox 64 from 1997, incorporated some concepts introduced in Star Fox 2. In later years, after the cancellation, various prototypes, ROM images were leaked online. In 2017, Star Fox 2 was officially released for the first time as one of the 21 games included in the Super NES Classic Edition. In 2019, it became available for the Nintendo Switch to subscribers of Nintendo Switch Online service. Star Fox 2 received generally positive reviews from critics, with praise directed at its depth, design, and strategy elements in the gameplay, but was criticized for its controls, short length, and technical performance. Instead of following mostly linear paths inside predefined missions as in Star Fox, the player moves a team of 2 ships freely around a map screen that represents the Liat system. When the player's ships make contact with enemy forces, the game switches to an action perspective, piloting the R-Wing ship directly with controls and gameplay similar to the first Star Fox. When the player clears the specified objects, they are taken back to the map screen to select a new destination. The 2 chosen pilots have their own shield gauges and can be swapped at any moment on the map, but one of them can run out of energy, their R-Wing will explode, resulting in their death. When a pilot dies, it's possible to continue with one remaining, though the other cannot be used for the rest of the game. The objective is to beat all enemy forces present in the map while defending planet Corneria. I was saying it wrong originally. It's as Cornea, it's Corneria, preventing its damage level from reaching 100%. The player must intercept fighters and incoming IPBMs, interplanetary ballistic missiles, while also dealing with battleships which deploy more fighter squadrons and planetary bases which fire IPBMs. If Corneria's damage level reaches 100% or both pilots die, the game is over. General Pepper employs a satellite that can shoot down enemies on a limited basis. The player must also defend this installation from special enemies that can take over the satellite and use its cannon to fire at Corneria. The player also encounters the Star Wolf mercenary team and various bosses. Star Fox 2 employs a semi-real-time strategy system. While selecting a destination on the map screen, the game is paused, but while the player's ships travel to their destinations, enemies and missiles also move toward theirs. While fighting enemies in the action screen, time moves at a slower pace than on the map screen, allowing other enemies and missiles to advance and cause damage. To prevent excessive damage to Corneria, the player may need to leave a battle to intercept another enemy. The plot: after his defeat in the original Star Fox, the antagonist, Andros, returns to the Liat system and launches an all-out attack against Corneria, using his new fleet of battleships and giant missiles launched from hidden bases to destroy the planet. General Pepper again calls upon the Star Fox team for help. Armed with new custom R-Wings, a mothership, and 2 new recruits, Miyu and Faye, the Star Fox team sets out to defend Corneria by destroying Andros's forces before they can inflict critical damage on the planet. Along the way, Star Fox must combat giant bosses, bases on planets throughout the Liat system, members of the Star Wolf team, and finally Andros himself. Star Fox 2 features 6 playable characters, more than any game in the series until Star Fox Command of 2006. These include Fox McCloud, the fearless leader of the Star Fox team, Falco Lombardi, the ace pilot with a headstrong attitude and is Fox's best friend, Peppy Hare, longtime mentor to Fox, and Slippy Toad, the team's young tech analyst and Fox's childhood friend. The 2 new playable characters are Miu, a tomboyish lynx, and Faye, a white dog and part of an aristocratic family. Star Fox 2 also introduces a team of rival mercenary pilots, Star Wolf, which includes Wolf O'Donnell, the leader of Star Wolf and despicable criminal, Leon Pawalski, an inscrutable and sinister chameleon, Pigma Degnar, an arrogant and selfish pig who is a former member of the Star Fox team before betraying them, and Algie, a devious creature with incredible precision aim. Development. Like its predecessor Star Fox from 1993, Star Fox 2 was co-developed by Nintendo EAD in Japan and the British company Argonaut Software. Development began shortly after work was finished on the European and competition versions of Star Fox. Argonaut had a contract with Nintendo to create 3 games. After Star Fox, Argonaut programmers Giles Goddard and Dylan Cuthbert worked on Stunt Race FX from 1994 and Cuthbert on Star Fox 2. Cuthbert worked on Nintendo's headquarters in Kyoto and had little contact with Argonaut during development. He served as the lead programmer and was assigned 2 Japanese Nintendo programmers to work under him. The team was overseen by the designers Shigeru Miyamoto and Katsuya Iguchi, with Iguchi as the director. Edge reported in December of '93 that development on a sequel to Star Fox had begun. The team decided early on to use the Super FX2 chip in the game cartridge. It was an enhanced version of the Super FX, a reduced instruction set computer, or RISC, for SNES ROM cartridges developed by Argonaut. The original chip was designed to calculate 3D math quickly and was first used in Star Fox. The Super FX2 had more memory and ran at 21 MHz, twice as fast as the original chip. Argonaut's original proposal for the Super FX used this improved architecture, but Nintendo found it too expensive. Cuthbert also rewrote parts of the engine to run in parallel in RAM to free more Super FX2 processing for more advanced features such as planar clipping and advanced collision detecting. These enhancements enabled the chip to manipulate more polygons and sprites and to map textures more quickly, giving the team the computing power needed for free-roaming 3D environments. Such free-roaming gameplay was planned for the original Star Fox, but it was made on rails because of the original Super FX chip's limiting computing powers. Cuthbert also retooled the engine to increase the frame rate from 20 FPS to 30 FPS frames per second, but it was not steady, so they locked the frame rate at 20 frames per second. Freely explorable environments were the only gameplay element planned for the original Star Fox carried into Star Fox 2. All other ideas were new. Miyamoto considered the Star Fox series a platform for experimenting with new gameplay ideas. The team experimented more with Star Fox 2 than Star Fox 1, or original Star Fox. This led to gameplay ideas such as the platforming sequences with the robot walker. Miyamoto took great interest in Cuthbert's platforming gameplay before Super Mario 64's release in 1996. At one point in development, the walker sequences occurred in a much larger space stations with energy gates that needed to be unlocked, a gameplay structure comparable to dungeon crawling. Because of the Super FX2's greater computing power, the team decided to have the fighters visibly transform into bipedal walkers. The transformation was made in a realistic sense The artists drafted the mechanisms by which the fighters transformed. Iguchi wanted to explore a more roguelike game system and use similar game mechanics to Star Luster from 1985. He played Star Luster repeatedly for inspiration and was particularly fond of its random encounter system. He also enjoyed Fortune Street and was inspired by its more strategic gameplay elements. Given this direction, the team designed the main gameplay structure. Players would move across a map defending planets from the enemy, battling a randomly generated enemy encounters. It was designed to play out differently for each gameplay session. For further replayability, the team added 6 playable characters, 2 of which were series newcomers, Mio and Faye. More antagonists were added, including Wolf. A 2-player mode was planned and tested, but the team could not get the frame rate high and steady enough for it to be enjoyable. Cancellation. By mid-1995, Star Fox 2 was nearing completion and was planned for release in August. However, 3D technology was advancing quickly and the 3D game market was expanding, with competition from Sony PlayStation and the Sega Saturn. The consoles ran impressive 3D graphics that captured the public's attention. Nintendo was concerned that the 16-bit Star Fox 2 3D visuals would be compared to the superior 3D capabilities of competing consoles. Cuthbert said that Star Fox 2 would be compared directly against games such as Ridge Racer, which felt like you finally had an arcade machine's power in your home. Nintendo decided to prioritize its upcoming Nintendo 64 console, including a new Star Fox game, Star Fox 64. According to Cuthbert, Miyamoto wanted a clear break between 3D games on the SNES and Nintendo 64. The Super FX2 chip also raised the cost of production, which would have made Star Fox 2 an expensive release. Star Fox 2 was cancelled in mid-1995, when it was about 95% complete. Nintendo still wanted the game finished after cancellation, so they took it through full localization and QA testing. Cuthbert said that there may have been no official announcement of cancellation, and there was confusion about the game's status in the media. The August issue of GamePro printed in it that it had been delayed until 1996, while Electronic Gaming Monthly wrote that it had been cancelled in their September issue. Nintendo Power wrote in their September issue that rumors of the demise of Star Fox 2 have been greatly exaggerated, and that the release was most likely coming in the first half of 1996. Release? For many years, the completed version of Star Fox 2 remained in Nintendo's archives. Super FX games were not considered for Nintendo's Virtual Console content distribution service because Nintendo had difficulty emulating the chip. In 2015, Miyamoto told journalists, "In my memory, I enjoyed Star Fox 2, but I'm not sure I would release it. I'd rather have people play a new game." The beta leaks. In the years following cancellation, ROM images of incomplete builds of Star Fox 2 were leaked anonymously onto the internet. Cuthbert denied that he had leaked it and suspected the ROMs had been taken from his hard drive after he left Argonaut. The first ROMs leaked in the late 1990s were early test builds with numerous software bugs. These versions mostly consisted of debug menus and sparsely populated landscapes. One version included a 2-player mode. A few years later, an anonymous person reached out to the emulation community, saying that they had a non-working copy of the final beta ROM. The community determined that an internal header was missing and that they were unable to add the header to get it functioning. The ROM image was leaked later online. This version was in Japanese and much more complete than previous versions. The emulation community was inspired by the release to improve the Super FX chip handling in their Super NES emulators. A fan translation patch was also released, which took 4 people and over 100 hours of work. The patch developers also changed a debug modifier that was set to 0, preventing Corneria from taking damage. All leaked ROMs are beta versions. Some gameplay features do not work correctly, are incomplete, or hampered by bugs. According to Cuthbert, all the leaked ROMs lack the few final months of QA work. They were also all set up in debug mode, so the encounter systems and randomized gameplay elements do not work correctly. Speaking about the final beta ROM, he said, "The basic parts are there, but there is an adage in the game development. The last 10% is 90% of the game, and the ROM is missing that last 10% of iteration and refinement." The official release. When compiling a list of games to include on the Super NES Classic dedicated console, the system's producer proposed the inclusion of Star Fox 2. He thought it would be a waste otherwise to never release a completed and debugged game. Nintendo had preserved the game since its completion, making it easy to bring to the Super NES Classic. The device was announced along with Star Fox 2's inclusion in June of 2017. The announcement came as a delightful surprise to Cuthbert. No one from Argonaut or Q Games was consulted or otherwise made aware ahead of the reveal. Some of the original developers celebrated the announcement. The Super NES Classic was released on September 29, 2017 in North America and Europe, and on October 5th in Japan. The version is the localized English ROM that was completed in the 1990s, though Cuthbert suspected Nintendo had to make minor changes, such as altering screen flashing to get it past modern regulations. Promotional artwork for Star Fox 2 was created by Takaya Imamura, the original Star Fox character designer. The instruction manual was released digitally online and included concept art and design documents, an unusual move for Nintendo. In December 2019, Nintendo released a video of upcoming games for its Nintendo Switch Online NES and Super NES devices. The update included Star Fox 2 as a part of its portfolio of games, playable by those with an active Nintendo Switch Online membership as of December 12, 2019. Since the Discovery was launched in the 1990s, I wanted the media to be from the same era as well as being space-related, which is why I chose to play Star Fox for the Super Nintendo. To be completely transparent, the gameplay footage shown is from my spouse, who really wanted to play since it was their favorite game growing up. This also gave them a chance to play Star Fox 2, which they had never played before. Our total build time today was 4 hours, 24 minutes, and 2 seconds. We were able to finish the main game of Star Fox in about 2 hours, 9 minutes, then went back and completed the 2 secret levels, the Black Hole and Out of This World, which took an extra 48 minutes. The remaining time was spent playing Star Fox 2 for the first time. Let me know what you think in the comment section below. Remember to like, subscribe, share, ring that bell, all the things for the YouTubes. Thank you.